Hello and welcome to this new iteration of Unboxing Russia. My name is Pradnya, and together with Ekaterina Schulmann, today we want to delve into a very familiar, fascinating territory of political dynasties. So first thoughts, Ekaterina, on that, why we want to talk about it today.
Actually, there's been a suggestion from some of our extending audience that the channel should actually not be limited to just being called Unboxing Russia, but should include in the title something about India, like Unboxing Russia and Understanding India or Measuring India. No, you can't measure India, not actually.
No.
Can you understand it?
One can try. There's always hope.
There's a highly famous little poem by Russian poet Fyodor Tyutchev saying that you can't understand Russia with the help of your brain. You can only believe in it.
Yeah, I think for India, you have to approach India with the basic assumption that when one set of reality holds true, exactly in the same moment, the extreme opposite of the same reality also holds true.
Yes.
India is a country of contrasts that coexist.
Same applies to Russia. If you say one thing and it's true, the opposite will be true as well.
So, some way or the other, everyone is right about India because there are so many realities.
Because it's big enough to accommodate any kind of explanation.
Yeah.
But registering my extreme dislike for this poem by Tyutchev, because we are trying to understand things using our reason, not believing in whatever, we can proceed now to
the most exciting.
Yes, actually, mystery number one, the huge mammoth of mysteriousness, which is Indian parliamentary elections. During quite a few of our episodes, we've tried to dissect the mammoth. I don't know if we succeeded, but now that we have a more or less final results, we do have results. Mm-hmm. So that's final by now.
Yeah.
Because these elections have been going on for
6 weeks.
Well, weeks. And results didn't come all in a lump next morning like we're used to getting them. In a smaller, modestly small countries like Russia. So
modestly small.
Yes. Everything is comparative. So was it a surprise?
Personally, it was a big surprise, and I'm glad that I, not just myself, but a lot of people were proven wrong in their assumptions that Mr. Modi and his alliance will kind of come up out on the top with a kind of massive majority. That did not happen.
But they came first, right?
They have, together with the alliance, they have a majority in the parliament, but the BJP faced a huge number of losses, and especially in strategically important places. So I think, so you would have to count in the northern Indian state of Uttar Pradesh, the most populous state in the country, and also with the most number of constituencies that send members of parliament. And then my home state, which is Maharashtra, which is on the western coast of India. So those two states saw a massive dip in the amount of shares, in the amount of votes that Mr. Modi and his party got.
Are they the most populous, but are they also the most urbanized, or are these
not really
country?
So Maharashtra,
regions?
yes, so Bombay is the capital of Maharashtra, which is the industrial hub, the financial hub, to be specific, not necessarily just industrial, but it also has a huge agrarian sector. And Uttar Pradesh is not necessarily extremely urbanized. It is still a good mix of rural, semi-urban spaces with some cities. But I think when you talk about India, you cannot make the blunder of trying to understand India by visiting its cities. It's a microcosm in its own. So you have to look at how the rural part of India is kind of, ticking, and then what is it that is important for them. And I think that's where there were a lot of gross miscalculations made this time, and that came back to bite them in many good ways, good ways or bad ways, depending on whose side you are on. But yeah, so I think going back to your question, it was a surprise. It was a very pleasant surprise. It was a surprise that, that makes you sit with that for a little bit and just
you're losing your veneer of objectivity.
No, but for me, it's personal, you have to take it in for a minute and then go back to, saying that, okay, there are things that you like it or not that were going well. And for that, he also did not make massive losses. But the losses were kind of, they could be digested.
So, what were those stratas of electorate that deserted Mr. Modi and his party?
So it's a mix. So I think when we're looking at India, you also have to understand that the demographic dividend that a country like India has, where the average age is far too younger than these parts of the world, which is around 30, mid-30s. So these are people who are itching to get into the job market. And even if India has sustained a fairly decent growth rate over the past few years, despite the global pandemic and everything that came along, there is still a huge number of unemployment just because the number of people who are in the workforce is high. So there are...
Do you have a youth bulge?
Right now, yes. And I think that's also a part that is kind of driving this entire conversation. Because
and a side note, a youth bulge is a demographic concept. It's the situation when in your demographic pyramid of your country, you have longer bars for people aged 15 to 25 or 30. Russia, for example, like many aging societies of Europe, Central Europe, Eastern and then Western Europe, we don't have a youth bulge, we have a youth gap. So when you have a pyramid, you have a gap here. But with the younger nations, many African countries, some Asian countries, but not South Asian, these are also extremely elderly societies. They have a youth bulge. So when you have it, it's both, again, as demographers tell us, it's both a blessing and a danger because you have, well, more workforce, you can have relatively cheap labor, and that is conducive to economic growth. And generally, political leaders love high birth rates. But if you have a lot of young people, you may have high unemployment also.
Exactly.
And there's a correlation between a youth bulge and aggression, and internal or external high rates of criminality and political turbulence.
But yeah, I think political turbulence for a change in a good way this time. And I'm just looking at a lot of numbers. So let that not keep us away from the conversation, but just to put that in perspective. So when we're looking at unemployment numbers, so there are estimates between 16 to 18% to 45%. So even if we were to be conservative and take the median and say, it's somewhere between 20 and 22% for a young population, it's a lot of people who are decently educated, if not well educated, but who have no job. And I think we are speaking in a country which anyway has a huge informal sector. So if these people are sitting without the job, we're not even talking about people who are capable of working in the informal sector, So it's a big challenge. And I think the second thing that came to kind of, that helped tip the scales in a way is this entire rhetoric. I think we spoke about it at one point, about trying to construct a unifying Hindu identity.
Yes.
And a lot of minorities, especially indigenous people, or also people who belong to the lower strata of the society, the lower castes, I think they felt extremely disenchanted with the whole rhetoric because
they felt left out?
No, because there is no space in this whole project of, creating a unifying Hindu identity about their understanding of what Hindutva or Hinduism means as a way of life. Because Hindutva is the political philosophy and Hinduism is a way of life. So there are two very different strands going out with the same root of the word. And a lot of people felt that if the BJP, which is the ruling party, would come out on the top with a massive mandate, I think this project would be pushed through in an unabashed manner. So there had to be mechanisms that needed to be put in place, which is this checks and balance system. And also, I think if one looks at the numbers, BJP as a standalone party lost quite a few seats. The alliance as such did not lose as many seats as the BJP alone. And
again, for our listeners, the Prime Minister's party is
the BJP, is the ruling party. So the alliance with a lot of regional parties They lost about 50 to 60 seats.
Regional
roughly.
parties are allowed in India.
Extremely, and they are doing really well, even in the opposition alliance.
They are forbidden in Russia. You can only have federal parties and regional branches.
In India, you have, especially now in the opposition alliance, there are about 28 regional parties, which speaks for the diversity that we keep referring to when we talk about India. So I think that was the second gross miscalculation. And I think the third part was they were overconfident about their potential for success.
Pride goes before a fall.
I think the biggest blow for them was a loss in the constituency where this new temple was opened in earlier this year.
What new temple?
So there was it's a story of if the chicken came first or the egg. That kind of a thing. So there used to be a temple at a contested site in the northern Indian city of Ayodhya. Then the temple was destroyed by Mughal invaders, and then there was a mosque that was built. Then in 1992, the mosque was destroyed by Hindutva followers, and then this site was not accessible because it was a matter that had been in court. And then permission was granted under the current or the last government to kind of build a temple there. And
a Hindu temple.
A Hindu temple. And they rushed this whole project because just before the elections it was opened, and they had hoped for that to translate into electoral mandate. And exactly in that constituency, the BJP lost, which is something.
Yes, again, correlation is not causation. Maybe that's the one thing didn't happen because of the other thing, but it is certainly an interesting story.
It makes you think.
Yes, of course. So if I get you right, these traitors that were disillusioned with the current leadership and so voted for somebody else are the young people because of unemployment, minorities because they feel left out, and generally people who don't relish this aggressive Hindu identity building thing. All right. So the ruling party still has the majority, but not on its own, but
with the alliance.
With the alliance. Okay. Will there be a governmental change? I know that the prime minister has to step down after the elections. A lot of noise was made by this news of Narendra Modi stepping down because Russians don't quite understand whether it's just a formality or it's a real thing. Whether after such a result he decided to abandon politics, but I understand it's a formality, right?
It's just a formality. The new cabinet is already in place with not many shifting around. So I think that also signals a sense of continuation in policy, continuation in the person that a public relates with in terms of finance ministry or saying external affairs. So I think those key portfolios are safe in the hands of the people who had been running them going into the elections. So I think there is a stability.
Not much personal changes in the government.
No.
Are there a lot of new people coming in to be MPs?
So quite a few, especially on the opposition. And it's quite interesting to see because I think the opposition was the underdog. And I think they performed quite well considering the circumstances under which they started out. So like I had also mentioned in one of the earlier episodes, they did not have much in common in terms of their political vision. The one commonality was that they did not appreciate what the ruling party was doing with India. And they, in their own regional pockets, wherever they were active, they went to their voters with these very specific issues that were very regionally relevant.
Concrete regional troubles or problems or whatever.
Exactly. And they kind of managed well on that. And
when we say they, we have talked about the losers or comparative losers, but who are the winners? Because I've heard tell that the party that came second is even more populist and nationalist than the ruling party. So the idea was don't be too happy about these results. Mr. Modi will look moderate in comparison. How do you see this?
Oh, so you mean within the alliance?
Perhaps.
Because on the opposition side, like I think that is the big challenge that we will see in the next 5 years, how that pans out. Because barring from their common dislike of of the establishment, I think they need to figure out a common ground.
Was there an alliance of the opposition?
That was called India. The alliance was also called India, which was led by the Congress party, the former glorious party, the Indian National Congress, which kind of faced massive losses over the past two legislatures. And now
are they having a comeback?
Sort of. It would be too soon to say they're making a comeback already, but the alliance has made a comeback. So I think the Congress party has been humbled in many ways than one through the electoral losses that they faced in the last two elections. And they have made this space for a lot of alliances to form up with regional parties and make sure that they kind of, pander to their needs and not just always say, we are the big party.
We can't exactly say what is the new favorite of the Indian voters in terms of ideology.
No, it's just
so it's not like some sort of Indian, I don't know, new star has been born. No,
I think it's a half a step in that direction, because there is a clear rejection of certain ways of doing politics. And that rejection has been made very known now through the ballot. But if they will subscribe to everything that follows, that's for us to see in the next 5 years.
All right. Coming back to the old and new prime minister, is it a blow to him, in a sense, not emotionally, but politically? Is he now seen as no longer invincible? Was this invincibility, this ability to deliver, this being bigger than anyone else, an essential part of his image? Or can he do with just having a majority?
So, wearing my analyst or objectivity hat, it depends on which side of the spectrum you speak to. So if you speak to people who are staunch followers of Mr. Modi and his party, they would say, come on, this is a small setback. And people who have voted against him are people who are falling prey to wokeism, are people who are falling prey to a lot of foreign interference. These are people...
Of course, foreign interference.
And these are people
everywhere.
Who don't understand what is in the interest of India in the long run. These are people who fall for short-term goals and short-term gains. And then there are people on the other side of the spectrum who are not so quick to say that, he's been defeated. But one can say he's been humbled, and not just him, it's also the party that has been humbled. Because Mr. Modi, let's be real, I think he may do another term, maximum one more to follow, if his health allows that. But then the party is on its own. So, there's this whole chest-thumping, jingoism, overconfident approach to an election, which still fairly works, like as we saw.
Well, having a majority is a good thing.
Yeah, so I think he's been humbled. I don't think people are talking about him being defeated. That would be the extreme left of the spectrum. But to kind of stay somewhere in the middle for the sake of, objectivity, I think he's been humbled.
Is his party a highly personalized institution?
At the moment, yes. At the moment, yes. I think there are certain faces that are the face of the party. So it's more about the people than the party. So one of them, of course, is Mr. Modi. The second person would be the Home Minister, Mr. Amit Shah. And they have been working together since Mr. Modi was the Chief Minister of Gujarat, which is going way back. And then, of course, Mr. Jaishankar, who is the Foreign Minister or the Minister for Foreign Affairs, who was a former career diplomat and then kind of changed gears and then became a full-time politician.
Speaking of comebacks, I've heard that at least a couple of people bearing an illustrious name of Gandhi have made a comeback to become members of parliament. Am I right, by the way? And who are those people? So
Rahul Gandhi contested from two constituencies. One would be in the northern part of India.
Can you do that?
Which he did.
So you can run for two different constituencies at the same time?
So he ran from Raebareli, which is in the northern part of India, and Wayanad, which is in Kerala, which is the southernmost state in India. So two very different, very diverse.
How did he manage the campaign? Because you'll have to kind of
But I think
transport yourself from one end of the country to another.
Yeah, I think, but it was more to him than just the two constituencies. I think in the run-up to the elections for the few months before that, he had been going out on this pan-India journey, which was roughly translated bringing India together journey. So he met a lot of local stakeholders. He was extremely visible, and he was accessible.
How old is he?
He's in his early 50s, I would say.
How is he related
Late 40, early 50.
to the Gandhis that we know?
So he's the great grandson of Jawaharlal Nehru.
So that's the direct line.
That's the lineage that he comes from.
And what is the other Gandhi candidate?
That would be his sister. So once
his sister.
Yeah, Priyanka Gandhi Vadra. So because he got elected from two different constituencies. One would be Raebareli and Wayanad.
So he won both.
He won both. So then
what do you do in this case? You choose one.
You vacate one, and you vacate one, and then there's a by-poll that gets conducted. So now his sister will contest from Wayanad, which is from the southern Indian state in Kerala. But I think her chances are fairly decent for her to win, because people in that area have probably already made a choice of, putting the Congress.
So they vote for the surname?
No, I think they vote for the Congress, because Kerala is always going to be a sore, they are always going to be a thorn on the side for people who want to predict, because they are extremely different in their own political approach and very secular in ways they do things. So Kerala is always like a exception in many ways, also in terms of development.
Interesting. Yeah. So I know, thanks to you, that the Gandhi family has been, if not exactly accused, at least had this unpleasantly patrician reputation in the Indian public opinion of recent decades as a family that has well-nigh monopolized politics for many years. And that, by contrast, the current prime minister is seen as a
servant of the nation.
Yes, of course. He has no family, at least no children, and he comes from no noble lineage. So there was a contrast. This comeback of the Gandhis, is it a kind of disillusionment with the ruling authorities, or is it the comeback of a traditional clannishness of Indian politics?
No, I think the Indian electorate is extremely unpredictable in many ways than one. And the one thing that they like to do is to humble people down. So they're also kind of party to, putting them on a pedestal, like putting them up and then making them feel like a king. But then out of nowhere, they also have a way of humbling people. So this humbling exercise that happened with the Gandhi family 10 years ago, when the BJP rose and just like swept away the most of the seats available for the elections. And that time the Congress party was really struggling. I think they barely had a few seats. The last legislature, they had about 50 seats in the parliament, in a 543 strong parliament. So
Indian parliament is really big.
That's nothing. So, 50 seats is really like nothing for a federal party. And I think they have humbled down. They have realized that always having to obsess with this thing that a Gandhi has to lead the family, has to lead the party. It's not a family enterprise. So I think that has humbled them down. They had to create space for other figures to at least come up and have some agency in, deciding the course of the party. So,
is nepotism generally seen as something bad or something natural?
It's something natural, but there have been moments in history where it has been rejected massively. So it's not a given that everyone from a family, whenever they contest elections, will always come out on the top.
Because by the time the election results were coming down from India, a lot of the Russian elites were having fun at
St. Petersburg.
Yes, at St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which is no longer
so international.
Not so international, and it's not very much about economy. But
so let's start at the basics.
Okay,
who are the people who are attending this forum? If there's not so much of an international participation, is it your usual suspect friends like the North Koreans and the rest? Or
well, I was a participant in 2021. Actually, spoke at a couple of the sessions. Well, it's a big event. autocracies like ours are brilliant at presenting appearances, so logistics are our strong point. Organization has always been brilliant. A lot of money has always been spent. It's a running, I can't call it a running joke, but it's a kind of running theme of somebody making a photo of the menu on one of the restaurants and saying, well, look, Russia, this is how the elites are disporting themselves here in St. Petersburg. Again, initially, the idea was to basically have a forum for foreign investors in order to attract them. That's why it's in St. Petersburg, which is the window to Europe.
Not in Moscow.
Yes, not in Moscow, not anywhere else, as close to the West as possible, as European a capital as you'd wish to see. As you might imagine, with the conservative trend and isolationistic trend getting momentum since 2012, at least, and of course after 2014, not much foreign investment has been coming in, and the focus of the forum shifted to a vanity show, frankly speaking. When I was there in 2021, the chief guest, because like in a book fair, you have the chief guest of honor of the country, it was, I think, Oman. And this year it's Qatar. So the delegation from Taliban was there, I think, in 2022 and in 2024 as well.
So all the authoritarians sit together and have a glass.
Yes, and the idea is that we have turned away from the perfidious West, especially from the bad and cheating Anglo-Saxons.
Oh, but you left us out.
Did we really?
Because we like to, in some parts of India, we like to believe we have turned away from the West, in which we are finding our own assertive position. But anyway.
Again, you see where we're not unique. Autocracies love isolations, and they love this self-assertment, like we can do things on our own. We don't need them. Anybody else, yes. And there's also this turn to the East theme, which has also been playing since, again, at least since 2014. But the main thing about the forum is not foreigners from whatever direction coming to St. Petersburg, but Russian elites coming to see each other, as the Russian proverb has it, to see the people and to show yourself. Людей посмотреть и себя показать.
What does that mean?
Yes, that means to see the people and then to show off yourself. It's a kind of proverb used in a positive way, like when you're coming somewhere. Why to do this? To achieve this.
You make a PR event out of it.
Yes, dual aim. The specific feature of this forum in this year was what has been called by some commentators the exhibition of the children, the Nepo Babies Festival. Actually, it was not for the first time, because the alleged daughters of the president have been speakers at the forum before, but not simultaneously, not two of them in 1 year.
Is it like a launching pad for the next generation of oligarchs? Bringing them out, in the good old times, there used to be this coming out ball where people would be introduced into society. As you can tell, I have been watching Bridgerton too much. But, this entire exercise of introducing the next generation.
Actually, there is some resemblance, much as I dislike the monarchy analogies, because monarchy has institutions and it has a succession mechanism, which is, if not exactly legal in our terms of in our understanding of legality, but it's public and it's known to everyone.
And it's rigid.
Yes, it's known to the incumbent, it's known to his children if he has any, it's known to the next in lines, and it's known to the populace. But in a personalized autocracy, you have nothing of the kind. You have left behind electoral mechanisms, because you can't afford the risks of electoral rotation, unlike in India. You are not fully fossilized yet. You are not a solidified autocracy. There is always hope, yes. But there's always scope of things going
south,
yes, either for better or for worse. But we are a highly personalized system. So we don't have institutions. We, as I said, left behind the bad Western electoral institutions, but of course we have nothing resembling a real monarchy. But still you have an elite. which is highly conservative and rather small, and which has been in place for the last 25 years, if not longer, because many of the people ruling us today are actually descendants of the nomenclatura of Soviet times. And by this time, these people have children who have grown up and may and want to, or their parents want for them to enjoy nice positions of their own. So we have, I don't know if we can call it a trend, but the former Secretary of Security Council, the famous Nikolai Patrushev, the Hawk of Hawks, has a son who was for many years a Minister of Agriculture, and now he is Deputy Prime Minister, also covering this sphere. The former Prime Minister, and who was then head of External Intelligence Service, has two sons. The elder is the banker, and that means heading a state bank in Russia. And the younger was on state service, and he has recently been promoted to become Deputy Minister of Defense. You remember the Minister of Defense and things that happened there. So now we have Pavel Fratkov, the younger brother, being a Deputy Minister of Defense. And of course, he had nothing to do with the military previously. Actually, this next step of making changes, if not purges, in the Minister of Defense is all about putting not just civic people in the places of minister and deputy ministers, but also people who previously had no connection with this field whatsoever. And at least two of the new deputy ministers of defense are younger generation of the elites.
So if I might intercept you at that point, how young are we talking about? Because I'm thinking, are these the people who have kind of managed to weasel out of enlistment? Or that is one of the most logical questions that would come up, no?
Yes, that's a very good question. None of them have ever done army military service. And military service by conscription is actually obligatory in Russia.
Exactly.
You can, as you say, wiggle out of it. There are many ways. Not all of them are illegal. So you don't need forged documents. There may be reasons of health, or you may be studying at a university, and then you go to aspirantura, maybe you get a degree, and then you reach the coveted age of 27. By the way, now it has been raised to 30, speaking of aging population. So yes, none of these people have ever been in the army, and no questions asked, and that's the advantage of having an almost monopolistic control of the public sphere, because those that can ask questions are mostly outside of Russia, and they can have no direct contact with these people. So no awkward questions on press conferences for us. So coming back to the Minister of Defense and the Economic Forum. So we have two people as deputy ministers, this Pavel Fratkov and Anna Civilova, who is reputedly, again, not reputedly, it's a well-known fact, she's the daughter of the president's cousin. So she's his niece once removed, I think. English has all sorts of terms for these relations. But it is known that these cousins, the president and his brother, they were connected, so they kind of knew each other. So it is not a distant connection. And this young person, again, you said how young we are talking. Most of these people are, this Pavel Fratkov is, I think he was born in 1981, so he's 3 years younger than me. Generally, these are people in their early to middle 40s. So this Anna Civilova was previously the wife of the governor of Kemerovsk region, which is the main coal-producing region in Russia. And her husband has recently been made a minister of energy. So we have the husband who is the minister and his wife who is deputy minister.
So it's a nepotic, personalized autocracy.
Well, that remains to be discovered because, again, taking a step back and returning to the early June St. Petersburg, which, by the way, is the best season to be there because it's white nights. And it's as beautiful and unreal as you can imagine, or you can't imagine. So this is one point, one big point in favor of the forum. Meaningless as it is at least situated in the loveliest place during the loveliest
point
season
of time in the year.
Yes. So not only we had two daughters of the president, and this is a bit of a mystery because he never acknowledged them, and they have different
But they still
surnames.
get invited to all the right places.
They get invited to all the right places, but they don't have governmental positions, at least not yet. Another person was falling into this children's category. Now was the daughter of the ex-defense minister, now Secretary of Security Council, Ksenia Shoigu, and she, by the way, was the star of the many previous forums as well. She's supposed to be a business woman, so she signs contracts, doing handshakes before the cameras.
Can I ask one question as someone who's recently got interested in Russia? To be fair. So do you think this is something that is always happened, that, you're kind of putting in the Nepo babies, if one might call them that, in the right offices? Or is it something that's peculiar right now and that's why it stands out?
Again, yes and no. On one hand, nomenclatura and elites in general tend to reproduce. Soviet elites were no exception. I can't say that they formed a closed entity on the lines of French aristocracy, for example. But if you were born in the purple of the Communist Party, you had a pretty good chance of doing well in life. But there was also a very binding communist ethics, in which everyone had to be or pretend to be a working person. And there was this unspoken rule that a child cannot occupy a position higher than that of the parent or inherit his or her place. So you can't put your offspring over your head. But, of course, you can, for example, diplomats are very much a closed case. So if you were born in the family of diplomats or workers of the foreign office, then you will, highly likely, you will go to a specific institution, to MGIMO, and then you will be sent somewhere to a nice locality, to some nice embassy. But there was no inheriting offices. And there was no promoting these children too high or making that public. Modesty, at least the appearance of modesty, had to be maintained. So this is a tradition. What is happening now is relatively new. And again, on one hand, there's some level of tolerance for this because, of course, you want the best for your child. And there's this understanding on the part of the Russian people in general that I would do the same if I were in their place, take care of the family, of course. At the same time, I don't think this publicity is very much to the taste of the public in general because, again, no one likes Nepo babies. And the sense of inequality...
The Nepo babies like the Nepo babies.
And they marry each other, right? The sense of inequality is very sharp in every society, but in a poor society, with the Gini index being what it is, I think this feeling is particularly
But then it doesn't translate into any kind of pushback, no? That's the curious part.
But you can't do pushbacks in a highly repressive autocracy. You can only harbor a grudge, waiting for the time when you'll be able to...
One fine day.
Yeah, to do this humbling exercise that you mentioned. One last thing that I want to say is this. Russians have a reputation for being levelers because of the communist revolution, of hating rich people and of always wanting some kind of equality. But if we read the sociological surveys carefully, then we can see that there's really no antagonism towards the rich. And the option of... the question was asked like this: what is a just society? And then there was a choice of option. The option that a just society is the one with no rich people was not popular. I think it took about 11% to uphold this idea. But what is actually making people mad is not monetary inequality per se, but unequal access to basic services, mainly healthcare and education.
Of course.
And secondly, inequality before the law. The privileged being able to get away with things that poor people are punished for. So this inequality is what is really kind of festering in the heart of Russian mass consciousness. So it's not about you having a yacht. It's all right for you to have a yacht. Again, if I were rich, I would do a luxurious lifestyle as well. That's the understanding. But it is unfair, it is unjust that I can have access to basic healthcare and you can't do this. It is usually formulated like this. Let them have their lifestyles, but it is a shame that we need to collect money by text messages for children's oncological operations. State should take care of this. And of course, getting away with things is seen as a very, very bad sign, a sign of rampant injustice.
So one last question before we kind of wrap up for today is, so you've mentioned all these, there is this festering of, people are not happy in a way of how things are panning out.
Again, according to the surveys and according to the amount of antidepressants being sold in Russia and the number of people who go to seek psychological help, no, they're definitely not happy. But there's a lot to make them unhappy when the war is going on.
Of course. So, but are you looking at these set of events in a sum of its own in a way as factors that are just kind of piling on, and then there just needs to be like a spark and then it just like blows up? Or is it more like people have this sense of resignation, like in a way that, okay, no matter how unjust I think it is, I don't think I can change that? Because I think that's a sad and a tipping point where hope starts to disappear, especially in terms of a democracy, autocracy kind of conversation. As long as that hope is there, people still kind of manage to get themselves together, gather themselves together and do something about it. Or is it an open conversation?
Well, you will understand, of course, that these things are hard to measure.
Of course, but that's why I asked about a sentiment.
How do you measure the degree of desperation or the degree of resignation? I think it works rather the other way around. It's not like so long as you have hope, you will use opportunity. It is when opportunity arises, or in simpler political terms, when the power weakens, then hope springs up. And all those old grudges suddenly revive. The same applies to, for example, the grudges of the regions, of the national ethnic groups. When and so long as the center, the federal center, is both rich and strong, we can put our unhappiness in a dark corner. But when it gets weaker, if, then I think all those old remembered injustices may come back to bite them. I personally think that being so shameless about these family promotions is not good. Russia doesn't have an aristocracy since 1917.
For a good reason.
For a good reason, of course. There is no popular understanding that we have a respected elite, unfortunately for us. We don't even have many leaders of public opinion, moral authorities. The authority of religion is low. So we have a deficit generally of trust. And in this situation, saying that my niece or my little boy is better than you for any sort of position, you get away with it.
Through the virtue of birth.
Yeah. You get away with it. Now, of course, there won't be a public protest on the Red Square saying, bring down those Nepo babies. But I suspect it will be remembered.
Interesting. So maybe we can revisit this conversation next time in the one of the coming episodes when there is something that kind of is an extension of what we discussed today, because I'm sure these events keep happening.
Yes, and of course, when the system starts acting in a certain way, it will repeat its actions.
It's a repeatable pattern.
Yes. And we have an ambition of doing this amazingly educational podcast every 2 weeks, or at least twice a month.
Yeah.
So we make this pledge to be on time, which is not easy given our schedules, but
we try.
We'll do our best.
One can always try.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Listening and subscribing and being with us.
Thank you so much.